Hi, so if you've watched my channel for this entire year so far, you know that my goal this year is to create only one painting per month, apart from style studies and commissions. And since this is the very first week of April, which is insane by the way, it is time for a new painting. Now, a topic that I've seen come up a lot on the Discord server lately is same face syndrome. It is what happens when all of the characters you draw end up looking kind of identical to each other. Personally, this is not something I've ever dealt with, but it is always a good idea to preemptively make sure that it never happens. And that is where today's video comes in. Now, this video is based on a reel by H Rubin, who has been a long-time favorite on this channel, and she shared a reel about how you can create original faces using almost like a Frankenstein method. Now, this reel has been sat in my saved folder for the longest time, and I think it's finally time to break it out. I didn't want to call this a technique tryout since it's really more of a drawing hack, but let's see if it works. If it doesn't work, is it gonna make life easier? I don't know, let's find out. I have of course linked the original reel down in the description below. Make sure you go show it some love, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like and subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And also feel free to comment below if you think this technique is going to be part of your workflow going forward, or if you have any other tips on avoiding same face syndrome. I'm sure we could all learn from you. But yeah, without much further ado, let's dive in. This is not strictly part of Laura's tutorial, but it is what she starts with, and you already know I like to tell you guys all about the paintings that I work on. Before we dive into putting the face together, we're gonna start with a pretty solid idea of the composition and pose. I had a vague idea of what I wanted to draw and decided to try a couple of pose options. Thing is, I've been obsessed with plants of late. We only have plant talk to blame for this. It is definitely not that I'm trying to channel nervous energy into a deliberately slow hobby. No, but I have a whole bunch of houseplants growing at the moment, and the most engaging of them all is my pothos, or money plant, or devil's ivy, whatever you want to call it. I've been working on propagating some cuttings, and we finally have some little roots and shoots. But anyway, that is kind of what I wanted to base this piece on. As you can see, I left the face blank and went about getting all the other details sorted out, just so we're able to then isolate the face and apply Laura's method to it. I applied the usual iterative sketching to this piece, reducing the opacity of the first sketch and then creating a cleaner sketch on top of it. And once I had that in place, it was time to gather some references. Now, how this tutorial works is that we grab a bunch of faces that look very different to each other, and we kind of jigsaw their features together to create a unique face. I, of course, like to do this with stock images that are meant to be used for things like this. I've linked them down below because in this house we give credit where credit is due. But what I did was basically import one image at a time onto my canvas, rotate and flip it to align with the sketch we have, and then go through and decide which facial features I wanted to keep from each face. Just to show you guys what I had in mind, I went through and circled all the bits I wanted to keep from every reference. And now, let's get into the actual tutorial. Okay, so as you can see, once she has her sketch down, Laura imports a bunch of facial features from a bunch of different references. Not only does she do one feature from each face, she also kind of mixes and matches within the features, like with the eyes and the mouth, where she took a different half of each from different references. So with this in mind, we're gonna go through our references and start to put together a face. I always like to start with the eyes, and I thought it would be fun to get them from two different models who are very different ethnicities. I think there is so much variation in facial features that come from our genetics, and this combination would create some really interesting eyes. Obviously, we're not looking for lighting or colors at the moment, just the shapes, so keep that in mind when you're putting features together. Also, maybe this is just me being a noob, but I actually found it really challenging to be able to work all the layers with all the images superimposed on the face. So when you try this method out, make sure that you keep the references all separate and just drag the features into place. Don't do what I did, you will be confused as hell. For the nose, I really liked how this model's face was in perfect perspective for the pose that we have going on. Drawing the nose in perspective is still really hard for me, so this is definitely one feature I wanted to get a perfect reference for. With the lips, I initially really liked the subtle expression on this reference where they're slightly parted and you see some teeth. I don't usually paint characters with their teeth showing, so this looked like a really fun challenge. However, I did end up having to use the liquefy tool option to fix the perspective on the mouth, since it felt a little too flat compared to the perspective of the face. But looking back, I really like the shape and texture of the lips in this reference. It just seems to fit our character so much better. So then I also grabbed just the upper and lower lips and stuck them onto the mouth that we already have. And again, I had to warp them into place. I then decided to take some more time to just resize some of the features and reposition them just so they fit better into perspective. And this is what my sleep paralysis demon looks like. Let's go to the final step. Finally, on the tutorial, Laura uses this Frankenstein face as a reference, and using the big shapes in them puts together a completely unique face sketch. And it actually turned out super cool. What we're gonna do now is put the evil demon face to the side and actually start to put together a face onto our sketch. I started with construction lines on the face. These are all the usual lines that I put down before drawing any face. I'm sure I've mentioned these in a tutorial before, but it's basically a vertical line down the center and a horizontal line at the eyes. I then kind of guess where the nose and mouth should go. Obviously, these are going to be repositioned as we go along. It looks a little crazy right now. I then draw in some eye sockets and roughen some eyes. I did use the jigsawed face as a basic guide, but our marks are still very rough and chunky at this stage. Just putting down the overall impression of each facial feature, nothing too crazy. Then I lowered the opacity, and now it is actually time to try and emulate the shapes on the facial features. This is where I zoomed in super close to the head, even moved the reference closer in, and started to really try and get those shapes right. I also ended up just closing the mouth back up as usual, cause yeah. Here's the thing, when I picked references, I feel like I went a little too generic. Like, these models are all beautiful, no doubt about that, but they all seem to have that typical feminine beauty type of features that we see in magazines, and so I do feel that putting them all together actually ended up making a fairly average face anyway. So I'd say that the next time I try something like this, I'm gonna go for much more unique facial features and put those together. That would be really fun. That said, however, I do think this is a really cool technique to help put together original references, especially since so many of the usual face references out there have been done and redone hundreds of times. Is it more effort than just studying one face? Sure. But I think there is more to this than just creating original faces. I really believe that this technique, when used regularly, can push us to come up with new shapes and designs that we wouldn't usually put together. And more importantly, it expands our visual library. When we look at a pieced together face, our minds don't really see that there are individual pieces put together. All we really see is a face with features that we don't usually see, and so this face gets thrown into the mental archive. And to be completely honest with you, my mental archive has been running on fumes lately, so I am eternally grateful that Laura made this reel, because now the possibilities are absolutely endless. I did go ahead and add some inks on top of the sketch, which I'll share on Patreon on Monday, but here's the finished line art for this piece. So what do you think? Is this a great hack to avoid same face syndrome, or is it just too much effort to add into your permanent workflow? Are there any other hacks that you know of to avoid same face syndrome? Let me know in the comments below, because I'm sure everyone on the server will appreciate it. Thanks so much to Laura for this wonderful tutorial. I will leave it down in the description below. Make sure you go show her some extra love for me. And yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to show it some love as well by dropping it a big thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button down below. If you want to support this channel, you can always grab my extended custom brush kit with over 60 brushes that I made from scratch. These are the brushes that you've seen me use all the time ever since I did make the actual kit. You can grab it up on Gumroad. I'll leave a link up here, and thanks so much for supporting the channel. Come say hi on Instagram and Discord. I'll leave links to them in the description below. And if you want to watch me check out a bunch of other tutorials from a bunch of other amazing artists, I'll leave my technique tryout playlist down here in the outro. Check it out, there's loads to learn from it. But that's about all I have to say today, so thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!